speak. Yeah, I'm a Marshall fan myself because I love Marshalls, as we can see in the background, and especially me and my Plexi is something that I grew up on, using it in the studio a lot, and it's kind of my DNA for my personal tone. So I think I played a lot of different Marshalls in my life, knowing that I'm more the vintage kind of guy, but Marshall history has a huge span from the early years of Marshall up until, well, let's say the JVM years, and this is reflected in the pedal range that we have seen, which has been released at Namm 2025. And yeah, I have this beautiful book of the Marshall history with good old Jim Marshall still alive. This book, I think, is from 2013 or so, maybe. And Jim passed away in 2012, in April 2012. I still met him back in the days at the Frankfurt shows and some other. Never had a close conversation with him, but you know, I've been neighbors of Marshall many times, so I'm actually more familiar with most of their artists. For instance, Geoffrey Whitehorn was a Marshall demonstrator for ages, and there were the killer demos with Geoff in the soundproof booth with Nico McBrain from Iron Maiden, the drummer. I remember being there, being young, attending all the Marshall demos and having big fun. I mean, these days some of the artists became my artists, like Geoffrey Whitehorn is using an Amp1, and some others as well. Yeah, but let's have a look at what's going on in these iconic pedals. What are the tones? How well are they made? Are the tones nailing it, or is it just a whatever flavor that doesn't do the job? How accurate is the Plexi super leads, the 1959 100 watt super lead, and how accurate is the 800 and the GVM? I don't have a GCM 900 here in the room, but I have, of course, some Plexis here, and I do have an 800 here and a JVM. So we have the chance to listen to the real tube heads, and we can listen to the pedals. And then, of course, you can decide if this is making you happy. From the looks and cosmetics, I can tell you they look so cool. They are rather heavy. This is definitely some weight. I personally think they are a bit too heavy, especially if you would put one or two on a pedal board. The pedal board would gain a lot of weight. But hey, they are super solid. There's nothing to complain about the build quality, because their enclosures, aluminium with the, I don't know what this is called, shrinking paint. And then I like the cosmetics. I mean, you know, it's that Marshall gold black combination, iconic. So they appeal Marshall to me, which is so cool. Yeah, the way, by the way, I'm using an Andy Timmons guitar here. an Ibanez, I think it's the AT100, that has a humbucker in the bridge position, and they are still humbuckers, but more or less single coilish sounding neck pickup, and yeah. The reason for me playing that guitar is I just did a longer interview with Andy Timmons earlier today, and I actually did another longer interview with Andy at the Namm show, and next week I will have the Andy Timmons special about his, well, everything, career, guitar, style, and his new album Recovery. Yeah, check it out next week, same place, same time. I think we had a very, very intense and beautiful conversation. He is currently on tour in Italy, busy every day, unbelievable. It's like doing a clinic, playing a concert with his band, moving to the next town, and so on and so forth for the whole week. Then he flies back to the States. Then he will do some touring in Japan. Yeah, and check out next week's episode about Andy Timmons, and yeah, I'm just having fun with his guitar. It's I would say a Strat style guitar. Like it's a special mahogany neck, so it's not a stratty Strat, but it has a Strat style neck with, I would say, D shape. Maybe we can see, I don't know. It's hard to tell. So this is a mahogany neck and a special pickup set, I think, by Dimasio. We will find out about all this story next week. But now back to the Marshall sounds and the pedals. Maybe I can repeat a little bit about the history. Marshall started, I think it was in 1962 and 63. We have seen the first Marshall JTM 45 amps, which were mainly a slightly different Fender Bassman. And this amp is also one of my favorites. Actually, it's sitting here. That's my GTM 45. This is original from 1965. Already having the plexiglass front panel where the name Plexi comes from. There are earlier versions of that amp, but that's a pretty cool amp. You can still hear a lot of the Fender tonal influences in this early Marshalls, but with the Plexi, which people understand is the 1959 Super Lead. 1959 has nothing to do with any of the years. It is just a number that they used to identify their models. It's a model number, 1959. There's no real connection to anything behind that. There's no sister that was born in 59 or anything. So there is no reason for 1959. It's just a number. As other amps have the whatever 2203 and blah blah blah, and 1987 is the 50-watt Plexis and so on and so forth. So these numbers are just numbers. More important is this one is called the Super Lead, and the Super Lead is slightly different from the bass and the PA, but it's only in the input section. The PA doesn't have high and normal inputs. These are the separate inputs we can see on some of the older Plexis, like on this one, volume 1 and volume 2. One of them is the high treble input, which is this one. And then there is number 2, which is, I would say, the rumble frequency, low input. There is a treble bleed on the high treble input, and there is a smaller coupling capacitor to get rid of this wooliness. And what people have done in the past is, what I have done too, is bridging both inputs and then dialing in the 2 inputs to your liking, how much high treble and how much rumble, low end do you like with your guitar. And that's already a kind of character control. So that's a very, very important feature on Plexis, which is reflected in the pedal. So we have those 2 inputs, they are already bridged internally. Bridging the 2 inputs has also another side effect. The input impedance is reduced by bridging the inputs, and thereby you get, I don't know how many kilo ohms, instead of a mega ohm, probably 500k. Actually, I don't know, somebody can look it up in the schematics. So what happens is, by bridging the 2, you lose something of the super high highs, the shimmering, maybe over the top highs, the hi-fi highs, which is okay. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. It's a thing that also shapes the character a tiny little bit, versus plugging in the guitar into one of these inputs and not having it bridged. So that makes a slightly different sound, which is not possible on the pedal because they are always connected. On the real amp with the 4 inputs, it is possible. So here we already can see it cannot be exactly the same kind of thing. It is a whatever part of what's going on in a Plexi. Yeah, the setup that I have here right now is I'm using the Amp1 as a clean pedal platform. Let's get rid of the delay as well. As you can hear, it's very, it's not even bright or shrill. It's a very neutral, I would say, clean sound. And I dialed that in because I think it's more or less balanced through all the frequencies. There's no extra shimmering highs that have a zizzle or something. Okay, and so when we look at the Amp1 settings, it's bass in the middle, middle and treble, maybe a touch more, not in the center, and the tone is, let me check, I actually didn't check. It's all the way up, but so I consider this to be a more or less balanced clean tone. And now this balanced clean tone meets the Plexi pedal. Aha, here is all your high end. Off, on. Of course there's more volume and stuff, but so the advantage of having this guitar tonight is I do have a humbucker here. Actually, the other ones are also humbuckers, but Andy tries to be a little bit, he tries to have his neck and middle position not too much sounding like a humbucker. He wants them to be more single coil-ish, knowing that it is not a real single coil. I can change for a real Strat in a minute, but I use this guitar kind of a in-between thing that gives us a foundation to compare all the amps. So this is what we get from this guitar in the bridge position with the 1959 Super Lead Plexi. So it cleans up nicely. It has some gain. Looking at the settings that I have put the high treble on maximum for the song. I put some normal here. Let me show you what happens when I dial in those controls. So both all the way down, there is no signal. That's the normal one. And this is the high treble. So you can hear the treble bleed capacitor on the high treble input is something that I try to get not too intensive. Therefore I was using more of that input, so the effect of the treble bleed behind this control is only adding a little bit. And which makes the sound fuller. And the Plexi itself is so, let's say, skinny in a way that I don't mind when it's a little fuller. Okay, and as I did, so I was dialing in a touch of the normal volume and mix it to make it warmer. Without. Okay, so that's my setting for this guitar, and now let's see what the tone is doing. That's pretty shrill. Counterclockwise, that's very dark. So a very effective tone control. Well, I have, well, my personal taste is I leave the tone in the middle because the mids are then more present in a way, and it's not too dull, it's not too shrill. By the way, I found this with all the pedals. When I get out of the center with the tone, it changes something which might be needed for an amp that is super bright. So you need to have a tool to reduce the highs with that tone control. Or if you have something that is super dull, and then you need maybe more bite. On the Plexi pedal on this 1959 Super Lead, I think it lives more on the bright side anyhow, at least in my personal taste or universe of a Plexi. Hey, we do have a real Plexi in the room, and let me switch to my Plexi, which is, I think it's number 4. Maybe not. It's number 3. Okay, so this is The Who. Well, because The Who, Pete Townshend was one of the first guys that came to the Jim Marshall store and forced Jim to make this amp. This is why I just think about that. Is there a picture here of Pete Townshend? Let me see. Okay, this is all the anniversaries and the things. Wait a minute. The Sound of Rock. La La La. Ken Bren. Where is... I'm sure somewhere there must be Pete Townshend because he was... Here it is. So... yeah, he had a personal connection with Jim Marshall. Here we can see him with his early Marshalls, because Pete Townshend's father was, I think, playing the clarinet, and he was making music with Jim Marshall, who was a drummer. So there was always a little personal credit when Pete Townshend was destroying his Marshall stack. Jim knew that he will get some money from his dad, at least, something like that. Anyway, so yeah, back to the Plexi. This is the real Plexi. Okay, and now back to that's the real Plexi. It's a little darker, a little fuller. Yeah, mind that I'm not, I'm having similar settings on the input things and the tone in the middle. I wouldn't have more trouble because you can already hear that's on the trebly side. But hey, we get some of this nice Plexi character. So I think it is a pedal that makes some Plexi noise. There is, yeah. And by the way, don't worry, the indicator light has died on this. I have a new one of these in the office, but I didn't have the time to change it. But it's definitely on. So, okay, and now for the guys that own Amp1. That's the real Plexi. And that's the Amp1. To my ears, that's even closer than this pedal. So I make the long story short, if you have an Amp1, you probably don't need that pedal. Unless you want to do a different tone with this one and set this and use this in front of the clean channel and blah, blah, blah. There's always a room for another extra pedal and for something. But in the world of tone, I would say the Amp1 is doing the Plexi even closer than this one. But let's go back for the clean channel and the 1959 pedal, which I think is cool. It's a cool pedal. It does the Plexi thing. It gives you that sound character. It gives you an option, because any pedal gives you options. You can switch between whatever other sound you like and the tone that you dial in on this one. So yeah, that's a cool option. My final mind, it's rather heavy. Has two aspects: solid as a rock, and makes your pedalboard heavy. Me, these days, I'm all about saving weight, travel light, small as can be, and this is now the other side of the world, you know, compared to a micro pedal like this one that I also been involved in designing, like the Golden Brownie. You can see this pedal is like 1, 2, 3, it's 4 times the size, and yeah, but it's a statement. This is a bold Marshall statement, and that's one way of doing it. And of course, there have been pedals in a way like that. That would be another episode to be the pedals that Marshall has done in the past. But today I want to stick with the pedals and the amps as they are. Okay, do we have any Plexi questions here? Let me read. Sonja Schellenberg. Hello, Sonja. eventually I will contact you for some Amp-X kind of thing. Sonia is a brilliant engineer and does very cool mechanical stuff. Andy has a treble bleed here, yes, sure. And this is what helps to maintain the treble when rolling down the volume on the guitar. There's a little I can hear. Let's see if we get the same thing on the Amp1. Yeah, that's the Amp1 Vintage channel, and that is that's the real Marshall. You can hear the undertones coming from the power supply. Yeah, but this is authentic vintage, and there's some ghost notes that fill up the spectrum. Maybe it sounds a bit ugly without the music, but with the music, it can be nice. Anyway, but this is also... So, I'm just saying vintage channel on Amp1 is closer to my Plexi here. So, David Mattei, what exactly is the difference between super lead and super bass? Yeah, everything was super, so there is no difference. But the coupling capacitors in the input stage of the super lead is smaller. Don't get me wrong, I have to look up at the schematics, 22 nanofarad or something like that versus 100 in the other one. So there is kind of a roll bass cut, a roll off bass in the super lead, and the super bass has more or less a flat frequency response, and that's all it is. The rest of the amps are identical. So if you buy a super bass, it's easy to mod or to change it into a super lead. It's one component basically. Yep. So that was David Mattei. Okay, so basically the frequency range vary. Juras Priest, wait a minute, what is... I don't get exactly what you mean. The frequency range vary in those two amps. But actually it's more about the low end than the high end. And second difference is the super lead has a treble bleed on the input volume, which the super bass might not have, because the bass, nobody wants a clanky bass. So there's two components difference now. Super lead, super bass. Yeah, thanks for clarifying what we are talking about. And I have this JTM, which is a super PA here, the Thomann amp, and that also has no treble bleed on the volume controls, here called loudness, 1, 2. It's all different words for the same thing. So the good thing about the PA is you have an extra tube and I used that to modify this amp. So I have one side original super PA, all super, and the other one, when I flick the switch, it is like my JCM 800, but in this chassis. And I have made a switching there that the PA side stays 100% original. And by the way, the Super PA was being used by Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's another great amp. The moment you crank a Marshall, the differences become minor, because what happens is all the treble bleed capacitors don't do anything anymore. When it's on 10, it's like you have no treble bleed because it's bridged. It's like input of the potentiometer, output, hard, directly connected, in, out, done, and there is no way of changing any frequencies. So the only thing that might be different is a coupling capacitor, and that's something a lot of people have done to get like tighter with EQs, Eddie Van Halen, you know, with that kind of mid boost, reducing the low end to have less of that wooliness. Blackmore used that Rangemaster treble booster. Where is mine? Somewhere over the rainbow. Yeah, not here. Maybe in the office. But that's another thing. Or you have a tube screamer. The tube screamer has also a natural roll-off and a boost around 700 Hertz. So the good thing about a Marshall, and especially the Plexis, is they have a very solid frequency range, and they have the power, and they are easy to modify, being it with like pedals in front of them, and or you have you know, changes in some of the components to change the circuitry slightly to mod them to be less woolly, to have a bit more gain, and all that's usual things, which we can now see also on Marshall amps like the JCM 800, which is a modded Plexi. Their intention was to have that cranked Plexi sound controllable in a pedal or an amp which sits behind me. The 800 has a master volume, and this was the big thing back in the 80s, to have preamp gain and master volume, so you actually could dial in maximum gain at a decent volume that you could still play. So let's hear the 800 as it is. Where is it? Okay, I think this must then be, yeah, number 4. $800, okay? Here we go. I'm not using any of this extra potentiometer here, so this is kind of stock. It has a built-in effects loop on the back, but this is as stock as the amp can be. I actually also didn't change any of the settings. This amp comes from Mark, our neighbor, and it sounds as 800 should sound. Maybe a touch more mids. There's this little knock coming up after the middle of the mid control. $800. Okay, cool. Let's A/B it with the pedal. Zack. Amp1 clean channel and 800 pedal. Yeah, so the real 800 to me has a lot more balls. This is coming from the power amp stage, which goes to a Marshall cabinet in the next room as a load. And that is giving me a bit more oomph. I can fake it with a pedal. Let's try. 800 and pedal. So when I dial off the tone here, tone is not doing it, sensitivity might. So now I have to start and fake. I give it more bass, I give it less mids and a little bit more treble. Yeah, and now I come closer. Okay. But with this setting, we can see the power amps already cranked on the Amp1, which is 7. So that starts to do something, yeah, a little tube magic comes into play as well. That helps the tone. Once I reduce the volume, of course, we lose volume, which is a lot, but we also lose a little bit of the aliveness. But I have to admit, I can definitely, I definitely recognize the 800 characteristics in this pedal. So again, that's something that can reduce the volume on the Marshall a little bit. Yeah, the oomph. I think that's something it's a big hammer. That real 800 has a lot of nice low end in a way. And again, if I go for my whatever classic channel or vintage channel, let's start with the vintage channel because that already has also, so that's the 800 and that's the real 800. Okay, I changed the EQ to match the pedal towards the real amp. I just go back a little bit, as we can see, and I'm again more in this territory. So again, the same news is if you have an Amp1, what else do you need? It's all in the vintage channel anyhow. Some people know that already. Yeah, but it's okay. Can one of the pedals be used to give the Iridium vintage channel sound of a Mercury? That's a good point. So let's go for the Iridium. This is the Iridium. Also, no reverb. Now I have to do, wait a minute, this is a bit complicated because I put the pedals in front here. Let me swap both amps. That's because I put the pedals in front of the Mercury. Now I have to, let's do it that way. I will swap these two. And I have to swap these two. So, and now the Iridium is on the one. Okay, and now I have the Iridium on clean. Let's say it's clean. It is clean. And now I should be able to listen to the 800. Yes. And now I have an 800 Marshall pedal into the clean channel of Amp1 Iridium edition. So let's check what happens there. Actually, there's more oomph. I think it's a nice combination. And now we can compare this to the 800. I would say the Iridium loves that 800 pedal. They actually match very nicely. Aha, so that's good news. Nice combination. What's the question? Harald Edelsbacher. Can one of the pedals be used to give the Iridium the vintage channel of the Mercury? Well, is this the vintage channel of the Mercury? let's see, I can switch to the vintage channel of the Mercury. I would say, yes, it definitely goes a lot into this direction. Let me check everything. I think the Mercury is still a touch more touch sensitive, but hey, this is totally. If you don't have an AB, it gets you very, very close to the vintage channel here. So good news. Let's try the 1959 in front of the Iridium. Nice, but a touch too bright for my ears. Yeah, by taming the highs with the tone, I can live with that as well. So, yeah, good news. Those pedals love the Iridium. And the Mercury already is there. So, you know, okay. There is any more questions about the 800 at this point? So far, I haven't heard any use direct from FX return on these pedals. That sounds good. Flavored overdrive only, it seems. Wait a minute, so far I haven't heard any use direct to FX returns. I think these pedals are more or less designed to go in front of amps. We can do this. Let me go through all the 4 pedals, and then I can go into the effects loop return and see what's the result there. Otherwise everything gets all over the place. But yeah, it is nice. So next pedal in line would be, let's stick with the Iridium, the 900. Okay, sorry, this was Plexi and 900. There is some noise because the 900, which I don't have as the real one, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of the 900s. So, and even in my network of friends, I don't remember. I had a 900 from somebody, but I forgot about whose 900 it was. So there's no 900 in the room, but we have the 900 pedal. What it is the successor of the 800 that was done in the 90s to have even more gain, to have a more aggressive tone. Some of the 800 players that had the 800s in the 80s moved onwards with the 900s to be more modern, but I personally felt that the 900s are too processed in a way. But hey, I'm coming from the vintage angle, and yeah, that's my personal opinion. Let's listen to the 900 pedal. So it's probably the right noise of a 900. Do we like it? Maybe you do. For me, it's overcompressed in a way that I do like compression, but just a touch. And let me fiddle with the knobs so you can hear that I already tried to get the best out of the pedal. Less gain. Works. There's this harshness which I try to avoid, so I stay below middle position. And this is kind of scooped mids here on the contour control. I can only live with a touch of that. Little noisy. I'm torn between do I like it, or for me it's too processed. If you hear the right frequencies and it makes you happy because it's just that perfect gladiator noise that you want in your band, that's your pedal. I'm not the biggest fan of it. It does make the noise of the original amp, and as I said, that was not my cup of tea either. So I'm not the best guy to promote this pedal. Well, actually promote. This is all. Anything here on this channel is not sponsored. I have to mention this. Maybe it's important. I mean, there are other YouTubers that get paid in gear by a company because, you know, you get the gear, you can keep it, or you get even money, or you have an affiliate link. I just give you my personal opinion, and that's all I do. I have to admit I'm slightly biased towards what is in my room, and the reason for that is very simple, because I bought these amps because I love them, and I haven't sold them even after decades, so they must be good, at least in my opinion. Maybe you have a different taste, fair enough, but this is why this stakes here, and my amps sound the way that I like them to sound. So if I haven't done anything really wrong, they probably do what I want. So, and of course, I am always interested in gear, and I love the Marshall tones, and as we can hear, I can dig some of the pedals here, some of them more than others, but yeah, it's fun. And of course, as we could already experience, it is also the combination of things. You know, I just played this one guitar up until now, and this is one parameter that changes a lot. If you have a different guitar, maybe things become better or worse, or, you know, in your opinion. So I just give you my 2 cents about things here. Okay, let's go for the JVM pedal, which is that baby here. Oh, okay, very loud. Let's go and reduce the volume a touch. I prefer that to the 900 because there are mids that hit me in the face, and that's and maybe you can hear there's a noise gate. Okay, that is the JVM pedal, and I should switch to the JVM amp before we don't have any comparison. So maybe you could hear the noise. That is the typical Marshall transformer noise. This is on standby. Well, good old tube amps make noise. Okie doke. So, and the JVM. Okay. By the way, whatever John Pasquet says, let's hear the DSL. We don't have a DSL in the house, unfortunately. I couldn't get the pedal, and by the way, I got the pedal from the world's biggest dealer. We are talking about Thomann. Thanks to Benji from Thomann, who is the guitar sales department guy in Thomann. He sent me all these pedals, and they sent me all the pedals they had, which excludes the DSL. It's not on stock at this point. And by the way, the 859 are also hard to get these days. Like the first production run is sold out. So you guys have to wait for another 2 weeks. Or you find a store that still has some in stock. But I know at least Thomann was sold out. And by the way, Benji, the guy who sells the guitar gears at Thomann, what is he using? Amp1. He has two. He has a Mercury and he has a silver edition. So, thanks. Back to the Marshall story. JVM 410H. Okay, this was the pedal, and now we go for here we go. So that's the Marshall, and of course we need at least one of those brutal channels, at least here in the middle with more gain. Lucas is trying. So I was here on, this is clean. The JVM is actually a very, very flexible amp. He has like green, orange, and red, like 3 modes for each channel. So this is like the Fender style clean. Vintage Plexi style. Already 3 sounds from the first channel, 3 different gain settings, and same thing with the crunch channel. So this is a very, very flexible Marshall, and so So this is like the gainiest channel, and then on red it's the most gain you get out of this amp. You can hear it by the noise already. Now the pedal. I think the pedal makes a good job, especially in the combination with the Iridium. If you want that over-the-top gainy sound and you have a noise gate. By the way, if you have an Amp1, you have that kind of sound already built in there as well, in the modern channel, and there's a noise gate as well. What's going on in the comments? Nightmare amp for red-green colorblind people. You mean like the Marshall? You got ears. That's my answer. Gain doesn't lie, and more is more. Keep it simple. Yeah, I know. The thing is, blue, some people don't see this color. I don't know. I'm not the expert. Yeah, get some sunglasses and yeah. All the lights are brown. Yeah, brown sound. Here we go. I mean, it's the sound before the amp just dies, and then let's brown. Okay. Anyway, so back to the pedals. Back to the big picture. I believe that these pedals are doing the job they are supposed to do, and I believe if you are missing a certain combination in your amplifier world with any amp, it's worth trying out these pedals, because they have the name Marshall on it, which is cool. They look like a Marshall, and they actually sound a little bit like a Marshall. Some a little bit more, and some a little bit. So yeah, it's definitely worth a try. There are other options out there on the market. We all know that Dave Friedman is also doing fantastic high gain pedals, because he is like grew up with the Marshall DNA and made his own version of it, and you probably know that I'm a big fan of that pedal as well. We could maybe swap this for the 900, because yeah, I don't like it that much. So let's try this one. This is input, this is maybe input, as it should be, and this is output. And now, just, this is so heavy and so big compared to this. Well, okay, personal taste. Let's plug it in. Okay, that is this pedal here. Yeah, the Friedman also lives in this world and has slightly different frequencies, slightly different attack. It's again worth a try versus the pedals from Marshall. I have. Do I have a preference right now? Maybe not. Let's switch off the pedals and see what an Iridium does. So this here is the vintage channel. It is, yeah. Then there's the classic channel. If I want a little bit more oomph and let's put it all the way up in the tone. So again, I believe the pedals are great, but if you have an Amp1, do you really need it as an extension for the tones that you don't get from the amp? And that's sometimes because of the setting that you have chosen for a specific channel, because you like that channel that way, and then there is one missing, and then get one of the pedals, dial in the pedal the way you like the pedal to sound, use it in front of the clean amp, and happy days. For fun, we can try and see how it sounds straight into the power amp. And so I'm skipping the preamp now. The pedal goes straight into the power amp of Amp1 Iridium edition. So this is the flat sound, and now I have the Friedman, for instance. There's a lot missing, so I need to have more highs. Again, a bit noisy, the JVM. And now the tone is cranked all the way up, which sounds okay now, but you can see how extreme I have to boost the high end to get a sound that is nearly balanced. So you can use them as preamps, but I would use them as pedals. That is my personal opinion. Let's see the comments here. There are unlimited Marshall in a box pedals by other builders. Yes, absolutely right. I mean, the thing about Marshall, if we think about the history of Marshall, when Jim Marshall was still alive, he was the owner and he was leading the company. And I could see that at the trade shows. He was the man, you know, he was there, he was proud of his company, he knew all the guys, he knew all the musicians. Even though he was a drummer, he had admired guitar players and musicians. So he connected to 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 the musician's reality, and he was listening to the demand, and he tried to find solutions back in the days when the rock guitar was evolving and needed to be louder and fill the rooms and fill the halls. And then maybe the Marshall was not the most innovative company, but still there were always things that were invented by other companies that finally made their way into the Marshall feature set list, as well, like master volume, like effects loop. I mean, we know that Marshall didn't invent the master volume and the effects loop, but it made a lot of sense. And finally, we have seen amps that were up to date for what was needed by the musicians back in the days. For now, my feeling is there's like a stagnation of Marshall inventions, because what have we seen new with Marshall? I think there is a lot of history we have seen with Marshall, and there's the name, and there's the iconic amps, the iconic sounds, the stuff that wrote history. And since Jim is not there anymore, his son and the family are taking care of the business in the way they are doing it, which is fair enough to do it as a certain way. They try to make business in a way that they have teamed up with Sound, a tech company, in 2010, and licensed the name Marshall for the headphones. That made them a lot of money. The father of loud headphones, and kept the Marshall name alive, but there were no real like inventions, like where is the amp after the JVM 410? Well, there's now they came out with something that I will also want to check out here on the channel, a modified Plexi, which is something people have done 30 years ago, which I have done myself, and many people have modded these old school design Marshalls to their personal liking. And these are great amps, no question about it, but it's like 30 years later, which is not innovative. And me being the guy who also wants to be next level, this is why BluGuitar is called tone innovation. First comes tone, so I'm all fine with the Marshall tone and the history, but I'm also looking on the other side of innovation. And in my opinion, Marshall was always a bit slow on innovation, but in the days when Jim was still there, I could see still the logic progression of products as the musicians told him what they actually wanted and what was needed. And so therefore we could see a lot of he is here with the JVM 410 in the picture, and that's 50 years probably of Marshall history back then. And they have done a lot for the music, so that's a fact. And in my opinion, it stopped after the father of loud was not there anymore, and now Marshall is still a legendary brand, and making the move to sell out the name for headphones makes sense. In 2023, Marshall gave the full range to that company, and now finally they sold a lot, except for whatever 20% shares, to a China company. What's the name? Hono's, what was it? Hongshan Incorporate. Hongshan. And they paid $1 billion deal, which is or 1.16. That's quite some money, which is there. And well, the Chinese know how to manufacture, and these pedals are probably made there, and they have to make a return on investment. If you invest 1 point whatever billion in such a name, you have to make products and sell them, because somebody invested the money, and usually these investors want their money back and even more. So I'm curious to see what they come up with as products that will give them the return on investment. And of course, the safest way is going the, well, history way, which they are doing. So that's all makes sense. That's something that is business, and it makes sense. Yeah, I'm not expecting the brand new innovation from these guys, like, wow, this is changing the world again. It's more like, yeah, we changed the world, and we have a look back on the history, and you can buy a piece of that history. Nicely done. In, you know, if that is like the headline, they have done it right in a way. So no complaints from my side. Hey, let's Olli Schröder, guten Abend. So here are some German comments here. We should try the Vox Valve Energy Copperhead drive. Well, das Copperheads is again Marshall. That's Olli's favorite Marshall in the box. Yeah, when we talk about Marshall in the box pedals or Marshall overdrive, Marshall style overdrives, there's so many, including myself doing a golden brownie and a, what's the other one called? I already forgot about it. Dyna Rock. And whatnot. And hey, not to forget, when you are an AC/DC fan, and we all know AC/DC is the sound of rock and AC/DC is the sound of Marshall. A part of the magic of Angus Young's tone was his wireless system, and Phil Solodalas did this in a pedal, and this pedal in front of a Plexi does that extra little buttery feel. And now he is shrinking his pedal from the big guy into the small guy. And yeah, he gave me this at the Namm show. He is a guy that loves also the Marshall tone, and he also makes his own tube amps, and he has an Amp1, which he loves a lot. Yeah, I have, he was at the booth at Namm, and he gave me such a big warm feedback. I was touched deeply. He will release maybe his video where he's talking about me on his channel. Yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to mention we can spice up even those sounds with extra pedals, with, you know, the classics, like one of these, or a tube screamer, or a Klon, or, you know, a Marshall takes pedals usually pretty well. except for the 900. So sorry for doing this personal. I'm not a 900 fan rant, but a Plexi takes pedals very well. 800 takes pedals well. The JVM doesn't need any pedals because it's kind of a complete thing, and the 900 either. So yeah, I think that's basically it from my side for today. Marshall, they will still be around because somebody put some money into the brand. If they would close, the money would be gone. So on the other hand, I enjoyed very much seeing their big booth at Namm. So Namm lives out of the atmosphere that such a event, a trade show, creates for all the people, the musicians, the enthusiasts, the industry people. And it was great to see a traditional Marshall booth at this show, and I have enjoyed having this feeling of there's a Marshall booth, you know, let's go to the Marshall booth, let's see what's going on there. And I was a bit disappointed that Fender did only the cold business lounge upstairs with no consumer level interaction. There were people with whatever, suits or not suits, in offices making big money. And that's not why I'm in this industry, because it's not about money. It is about the spirit that made us start to play the guitar, that gave us the idea of expressing ourselves, that sharing music with other musicians and with an audience. It is more than money. It is a way of living, it is joy, it is sharing, it's a community. And I love when companies contribute to that community. And yeah, so this was great to see at Namm that these guys were back with a booth. I hope it was not only for this year, but it felt great to be at the Marshall booth, just for fun. And of course there was also Dave Friedman with his new amp, and I will talk about this in a different episode. I have shot a little video with that. I tried to get one of those. This also belongs in the Marshall world of sounds. He has done a tribute amp to Jose Alessandro, who was the guy that modded all the Marshalls back in the 80s for Steve Vai and them all in Los Angeles. And he teamed up with the company, he teamed up with the family, and then put all these mods into one amp. And Marshall also did a modded Plexi. So I try to get hands on these amps. This might take a while because both amps are not available just around the corner. Yeah. Then, this is what's going on there. I see a question from Sonia. Have you tried Synergy modules? Yes, I do. I did. And I always liked the concept that goes back even, I think it was in the 90s. Randall had these modules. You understand technology a little bit. Let me explain. When you have a preamp, you have usually two tubes. And then you have a third tube, which is in the power amp. And then you have the power amp tubes. And if you put a preamp in a module, you have a Synergy module, and it's pretty much the same as the original amp. when the power amp does the same thing, such a module will sound pretty much the same as the amp, which they do. Me being BluGuitar, I think I'm next level. I make the sound of a module with a different circuitry. Why? Because I don't want to stick with the good old tubes that are not always as good. They are old and even harder to find, because these days it's not easy to get super reliable tubes. And for me, the old school tube technology is a super important thing, that we keep that alive, because the old school tube amps, they can be modded. Just as the Marshall has been modded and Friedman is doing his mods, and the amp designers, they have a lot of fun with the tubes. Why? Because it's so easy to understand, and there's so many mods known, and you can try it out, and you can get the best sounding results with a certain amount of technical knowledge. That's my personal. I can mod a Marshall, but I am not the guy that I do understand what's happening in an Amp1, but I have at least 2 killer engineers working with me in a team to be able to do this in an Amp1 using different technology. I know what I want, and I know what the tubes are doing, and I know how I would get this with old school tubes, just like the other amp designers. But to bring this to a new format, which is an Amp1, I had to find killer engineers, and this is my game. This is what I'm doing. And back to the modules. The modules is just a different packaging of the same preamp circuitry in a module that you can exchange, which is great. And then you can customize whatever you had, or they have different sizes of heads, Synergy I'm talking about, with 4 modules or 2 modules or only 1. And so you can customize your head with traditional tube technology, and kind of you have your custom amp, have a Steve Y module, and who else? There's tons of different great modules out there. So that's one way of doing it. I think I go my way, which is next level. Not telling you guys Synergy is not sounding good. Synergy is sounding good, just as a regular tube amp, if it's nicely designed. And I mean, they have done a good job. I mean, it's any product can be poor if there's people behind it that don't know what they're doing, or they don't have the passion. But the Synergy stuff is good. Have you ever considered making a Blue Go preamp for Synergy? Well, if I would do a Blue Go preamp for Synergy, it would be a joke. It would sound like one of their big modules, but it would be not bigger than this USB stick. And so this would be my module, and that's not the right format. When you look back into my personal history with using Kettner, I have designed all these sound machines, and looking at this, that's basically a similar concept, a similar idea. Why? Because the sound machines took even one step further, they had the preamp and the power amp in one module, which was half 19-inch rack space, a bit bigger than the Synergy modules, but you could crank the master, you could crank the input gain. And I was always a very strong believer in the fact that the power amp stage gives you that extra little magic. Of course, I'm a vintage guy, and as a vintage guy, if the power amp is cold, there's no magic for me. So the vintage amps, they don't have big preamps, they don't have big overdrive coming from the input stage. You basically drive the amp into saturation, which means you drive the power amp and the preamp stage into saturation. And this is why my philosophy is watch both elements. The sheer and only preamp saturation is so controlled, which makes sense for a few sounds, maybe metal sounds, maybe high-speed shredding sounds. I miss the aliveness of the overtones, the interaction of the tone that is a bit more complex. And that is at least my philosophy. And it's like shredding. I mean, you know, shredding is nice, but if there's only shredding and nothing else, I personally miss something. I mean, it's exciting if somebody shreds, but then, you know, give me one good note after some shredding. And then if your sound is just preamp gain and so controlled, that note doesn't hit me. And that's when you listen to some of the old school, okay, I'm old dude, players, they could have notes that really touched your heart. I'm Blackmore fan. Child in Time, the guitar solo, wait, wait, well, bap, but do. I mean, that's a tone, and by the way, this is preamp saturation because treble booster overdrives the input stage of the Marshall, and it was cranked because there was no master volume, and there was Deep Purple in rock. Listen to that tone. Just one example. Mike Bloomfield, Santana, blah, 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 blah. And actually, the older Santana sounds are probably more alive and kicking than the later ones. And guess why? Because there was no master volume in the very first amps. So, these are my personal opinions on whatever we just discussed tonight. I can encourage you to try out some of these pedals, encourage you to try out some alternatives, but it's definitely at the level where I have to admit it's worth a try. And if it wouldn't be like that, I would tell you too. And in German, das kann man so machen. In English, it could be done like that, which is probably not so cool in English as in German. Okay. So the new Synergy modules now have a 0-watt amp to get the feel. Yes. Okay, now we are talking Synergy, which I could do a full episode on Synergy. Why not? But okay, last comment here is they have created the country guy, Nashville. not Vox module, but inspired by Vox, Bad Cat or whatever. No, it wasn't Bad Cat. It was maybe. What is the country session guitar player in country from Nashville? No, Johnny Hill. Dr. Z module. Paul Schlachter, you got it. Dr. Z module. Johnny Hill is that country guy in Nashville, yeah, with the real head, a little bit corpulent, but nice. I heard him play. Yeah, unbelievable, guys. Brad Paisley, that was, thank you. Hey, you are so intelligent in musica. Thank you. Yeah. Brad Paisley, he had his Dr. Z module, I think, and that's using the circuitry of a phase inverter stage, which is part of the power amp stage, and that is giving you, yeah, Johnny Highland, it's the other guitar player, and that's giving you the feel and the sponginess of the cranked tube amp. But again, if you have an Amp1, if you play the vintage channel, that kind of zagging is always there. It's actually also on the clean channel, but it's especially happening in the vintage channel. So for me, hearing, "Whoa, finally we have the power amp saturation in the preamp module. This is the latest invention of the year, the hottest thing on this planet," I go, I've done that in last century. It's in this book, and it's part of Amp1 because I always found this important, and I actually forgot to talk about it. And maybe I should. So, yeah, Johnny Highland, it's the guy. I made a picture with him. It's one of those 4,000 pictures in my phone. So I will not try to find it now. It's a long time ago. So, hey, thank you, and thank you for watching. Next week, I didn't play any other guitar, but it was Andy Timmons' guitar. So you know what's coming up next, Andy Timmons. And it's worth listening to the 2 interviews I've done, and I don't know what else I will do, but next week is another great episode of Academy of Tone. Topic, Andy Timmons, because I think he's a great artist, and he's such a sweet and nice guy. He's playing the right notes, and he has a good heart. Check it out. See you guys next week. Bye bye.